Losing weight isn't easy, and some days we can feel like we need some extra help. Welcome to the Weight Loss Warrior podcast, the show where we share inspiring real-life success stories from normal, everyday people like you and I. Listen to how each of our guests managed to overcome their personal challenges to lose the weight they wanted, as they talk about the secrets to their success and give great advice that you can benefit from. Become part of our tribe and use the Weight Loss Warrior podcast as your source of motivation and support to help you on your weight loss transformation. And now, your host and friend, Carl Radley.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the Weight Loss Warrior podcast, with today Carl being your guest and I'm Claire, your host. How are you feeling, Carl, about being the guest today?
If I'm honest, a little bit nervous. And I'm so used to being the one in charge for once in my life that it feels a bit weird being on the other side. But at the same time, very exciting. And I guess before we get into it, I just want to say thank you to you for offering to host this special episode for our first birthday of Weight Loss Warrior podcast. So thank you, Claire.
You're welcome. I think I've listened to so many of your episodes. They're so inspirational. And it's a shame that we don't know enough about you. So I think you should make the most of your platform, really. And I'm sure there's so many people that are dying to hear your story.
Yeah, I'm probably not half as interesting as most of my guests, but I'm more than willing to share. And to be fair, I do get a few people come to me every now and again and say, it'd be good to know more about your story. I do try and touch on it during episodes sometimes, but yeah, let's make it all about me today. Why not?
Yeah, all about you. And everyone has a journey, and I think everyone can learn something from someone else's journey.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What do you want to start with telling us?
I'll tell you a bit about myself, because from a personal level, if we're going to spend today talking about me, my journey, I guess I'll start by letting you know a bit about me. I'm going to be 40 next month. That's quite a big thing happening in my life. Yeah, thanks. Still 39 at the moment. And I live in Barcelona. I'm a dad. I have two amazing little boys, Nathan and Dylan, who are 8 and 6. Beautiful wife, Nuria, who is Spanish. I came here to Barcelona 14 years ago for 2 months originally and never left. And then after a couple of years, I met Nuria, and here I am today, and we live just on the outskirts now. I work as a client service director for a HR and payroll company. It's not really the dream job people grow up hoping to be when they're older, but it was something that I started doing when I moved here. It was a way to be able to stay in Barcelona, and actually client services and working with people in this role is amazing. I feel very, very fortunate to actually have fallen into this role. Mm-hmm. I love music. I'm someone who just loves interacting with people, which is part of the reason I started the podcast. And I like helping people as well, which is a big driver for the podcast as well. Yeah. And I guess it's true to say I have a bit of a backstory and journey myself. I've, for as long as I remember, since probably hitting puberty, struggled with my weight, being overweight, had varying levels of it bothering me, it not bothering me. Many attempts to try and lose weight, ranging from joining Slimming World to going to the gym to keto. I've tried pretty much all of the things available. And then last year...
Sorry to interrupt you. Did you start trying to lose weight once?
You're the host.
Well, yeah. Once you realised, or once you felt overweight, did you start then trying straight away, like if you were a teenager, or did you wait until you became like a young adult? How did it work? What was the timescale for you?
So I first felt overweight. I was still in junior school, because we'd just done a school fashion show. I think I was in my last year of junior school, so I must have been like 11 or so, maybe 12. And basically we'd done this school fashion show where the parents all came and they could buy clothes, and I absolutely loved it. I'm very much an outgoing person. This was right up my street, prancing up and down a catwalk. Absolutely loved it. And at the end of it, one of the dads was talking to my mum and said, "Oh, Carl, you've certainly got footballers' thighs there, haven't you?" And I was like, "Oh," I was a bit taken aback. And I mean, not a hard comment, not really calling me fat, but At 11 years old, I was like, wow, what did he mean by that? Like, have I
Mm.
got bigger thighs than other people? And I wasn't really into sport or anything like that, but it was the first time I really noticed it. And I mean, to be talking about that now is like one of my first memories. It must have really had some kind of impact. And then the other thing was one of my best friends when I was growing up, her mum, who's an absolutely amazing woman, love her to bits. But she made a comment once and said that I had childbearing hips. And again, I don't think she really meant it with any offense. It was just like a joke. We're messing around. She's like, "Oh, you've certainly got childbearing hips." But it was about that age where I started to think, "Wow, I'm a bit bigger than my mates." And a couple of people mentioned that I was a bit overweight. So that was when it really started. But it wasn't until maybe 17, 18 that I decided that I wanted to lose weight, because until then the gym wasn't really accessible. I was going through school. I didn't really feel as a child that I needed to lose weight.
Yeah.
But then as I become a bit older, it started to play on my mind a bit more. I started to realize that, I didn't want to go into adulthood being bigger than all of my friends. And so, yeah, it probably started to have more meaning then.
Mm. And like, do you, looking back, would you say you were bigger than all your friends, like noticeably bigger, or was some of it just fueled by these comments and remarks? Like, realistically, if you were an observer, would you say you were overweight?
Yeah, I was definitely overweight, not morbidly obese or anything like that. But I was compared, especially, I think my best friends in the circle I was in, I was definitely the heaviest out of them. But the
Mm.
thing was, because the kind of person that I am, my personality, being ginger, and just all of these things, I've never let any of those things kind of bother me as a child. I
Yeah,
was never, picked on for being ginger or anything like that. It's because it just had no weight with me in terms of people could say something and it was just like water off a duck's back. So I think I kind of felt the same about my weight in that period, during high school. There was one embarrassing time we were on a holiday to Switzerland, and with the school, boys weren't allowed in the girls' rooms, girls weren't allowed in the boys' rooms. Obviously, me and my mate Matt were in the girls' room. Teacher came in, and they're like, "Quick, hide under the bed, hide under the bed." And my mate slid under the bed, no problem at all. And as I went to slide under the bed, my bum got stuck, and I couldn't get right under the bed. And it's a funny story, and I look back at it now. But again, it's those moments, obviously, when girls started to have more importance. My mate was much slimmer than me, and he's a good looking guy as well. That it kind of like started to separate, and I thought, okay, do I really want to be like this? Will people find me attractive? Will I be able to get a girlfriend? All of these kinds of things. Just the normal concerns, I think, as a teenager, they really
yeah,
started to play on my mind a lot more. And then
yeah.
probably at 17, 18, I decided I wanted to lose weight.
Right. And then what did you start doing? Because you said that you've tried everything, basically. What was the
Yeah.
first thing you started?
The first thing I did was going to Slimming World with my mum. And I didn't go for long. Now my mum she's been going, I mean, if you think about my age, she must be going for like 14, 15 years since, consistently going. And it must be longer than that, though, if I think, I'm going to be 40 and I went when I was 18. So maybe like she's been going a really long time on and
Yeah.
off. But the thing was, I went, but I didn't take it very seriously. So it was almost a case of like, oh, Carl went, I weighed myself, I stayed the same, I gained weight. I was going out drinking with my mates every Friday and Saturday. I was a young adult enjoying my life. And
Mm.
I realized quite quickly that losing weight wasn't as important to me as having fun, despite how I felt inside about being overweight. It still meant less to me than actually losing the weight itself.
Yeah, I think like I can relate. I think so many people can relate to that. Like the timing has to be right, doesn't it? And
Mm-hmm.
you're so young. That's such a young age to sort of have that awareness about yourself and that you want to change, but then to commit and make that a priority is massive when you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
discover who you are. It's almost like that would have
Yeah.
potentially got in the way of you discovering who you are and discovering your freedom and things.
Yeah, because I guess it was part of who I was already. And that was
Yeah.
the thing. So in terms of, if I was trying to change dramatically, and going through school, I wasn't very academic, very capable. Every report, I was just back in the UK recently, looking at some of my old reports. Carl has a lot of potential. He just needs to apply himself. Carl needs to be more consistent. Carl needs to focus. And I can apply that to nearly every level of my life up until a point, including my health, the way I looked after myself. I smoked. I was drinking a lot. Had quite a bad relationship with drinking, actually, in my early 20s, which would definitely have impacted my decisions in terms of health and being overweight, and my decision to not do something about it. So I ended up just going through lots of different failed attempts. I joined the gym, go for a couple of months, then quit. I try the Atkins diet, do it for a couple of months, and then quit. And so I, throughout probably, from 18 to 24, 25, I went through very various stages of gaining a couple of stone, losing a couple of stone, gaining a couple of stone. It was never really much more than that.
Yeah.
But, I'd had the same waist size from the age of 15 right the way up until, last year. So I'd always been overweight, but just varying levels of overweight.
Right. So something obviously clicked along the way. What was your
Yeah.
what was it you found that has helped you so much? Or what changed?
So, yeah, my big defining moment, my big click happened at the beginning of last year. But one thing I'll touch on first, because I did actually lose a significant amount of weight when I first moved to Barcelona, but it wasn't through focusing on my health. It was the fact that I was skint most of the time,
Right.
drinking every night, out till 4, 5, 6 in the morning, sleeping most of the day, and just not taking care of myself. So that first 6 months I was living in Barcelona, I actually lost a lot of weight, but it was more through starvation and constantly being out and about than actually taking care. So my health was probably worse during that stage, but I was losing weight. And so I lost, and I got down to probably the slimmest I'd been since I was maybe 15, 16, but I wasn't healthy. I was drinking a lot, not eating a balanced diet at all, having a lot of fun, but with that weight loss, I felt a lot of confidence and I felt a lot better about myself. I'd actually achieved it, even though I felt like I kind of cheated to achieve it. But
But what
then
about, can I
when I met
ask you about
my,
your mental health at that point? Because I know like we can lose weight and feel like we look good, but if we haven't got upstairs sorted, it can come back to bite us, can't it? The happiness is short-lived.
absolutely,
So how were you, you
I
say like you recognise you weren't healthy. What about your mental health? Was that okay?
yeah, I think at some levels I'm still working on my mental health, because it's something that I'd never really addressed until I started this journey last year,
Right.
because I'm very outgoing, very confident, positive, optimistic, that quite honestly, I don't think I'd ever associated or recognized in myself that I had things that I needed to work on, because I was happy. Stress
Yeah.
didn't really resonate within myself. But looking back through that, happiness, it was a very distorted view of what really happiness was, because I was drinking my way through my weekends. I was keeping company with people, doing things, that didn't really serve me at all. I was going from one relationship to the other. So I wasn't really at peace at all with myself. But I thought or felt at that time I was having fun. But when I look back at, going out and blackout drunk every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's not a good way to be. That is really not a good way to be. No
No.
matter whether you're in your 20s and just justify it as, having fun. I was the drunk one. And so when I think about that and my mental health, I kind of have some regrets about allowing myself to get into that state and not giving myself the opportunity to realize that really I was damaging myself and probably not in such a good headspace. So, yeah, to answer that, probably not great.
Yeah, not great. Although what I would say is not to be hard on yourself when you look back at your younger self, though, because it's only hindsight where we can learn these things. I think like you have to sometimes you have to go through a bit of a struggle to recognise, oh, I got through that via this or whatever it is. We can't be expected to know the answers straight away all the time.
I think you're absolutely right. And it is, and again, I'm talking about this now, and I probably sound like I'm being hard on myself, but because I am so positive, I'm so optimistic, I kind of had this like mantra that it doesn't matter how bad things get, I'll always find a way. And, you know,
Yeah.
I've been to the point, you know, I've down to my last Euro and probably have to go back to the UK, but I always found a way. I, you know, didn't have any work. I always found a way. And so I always take the good and the positive out of that situation. And while that's, I think, a good quality of mine, I think it also allowed me to neglect the important things that I perhaps should have focused on, you know, like managing my money, managing my mental health, managing my physical health, maybe being a more reliable friend to people. So various factors that I kind of covered up with the fact that I was happy-go-lucky Carl, who, you know, has a great life because he's in Barcelona and doing all these great things. And it wasn't really till I met my now wife that she's a very settled, stable person who's like, wow, have you really broken down like the way that you live and looked at it? And she did it from a place of love and concern more than anywhere. But it was the first person who had actually really stopped me and pulled me to one side and said, well, have you really thought about how you feel and what you're doing with your life, and for how long is this going to continue, and when does it stop, what are the consequences? And I'd never done that because I'd always grown up in an environment where there were really no rules,
Right.
no consequences. And so that, I think, was my turning point in terms of really growing up and becoming an adult. And then last year, on the 1st of January, was my new year, new me mantra. But I made a comment saying, wow, next year I'm going to be 40. Because obviously 1st of January 2022, next month, 2023, it was a year and 10 months away. It's quite ironic to think now it's actually just a month away. All that time has gone now. But it's kind of scary, you know, because I was, you know, I was only 38 at the time, and I was like, wow, I'm going to be 39 this year, 40 next year. But it really made me think about what I wanted to achieve or arrive to 40, how I wanted to feel when I arrived at that. And again, that was one of the first times I really stopped and took stock of myself and my life. And to think, you know, I feel very, very fortunate with my life now. And I did last year as well. But then at the same point, it was kind of like a milestone, and I had an opportunity to arrive at 40, overweight, unhealthy, kind of full of unfulfilled promises to myself and commitments I hadn't yet followed through on. Or I could start taking steps and making decisions and doing things to actually arrive at 40 with some of those things completed, which is what I decided to start doing.
That's such a healthy mindset. I feel like it's such a big scale vision to be like protecting that future self. Like in a year and 10 months, I want to be feeling like this. And I think you can scale that massively down as well to like your next meal. You can be like, do I want to feel after my next meal? Do I want to feel bloated, greasy, and lethargic? Or do I want to feel like I've got energy? When I wake up in the morning, how do I want to feel? And it's like we then start putting those things in place to protect our future self, whether that future self is tomorrow, next week, a year. And I think that's such a pivotal moment when your mind can think of the future self instead of just living in the moment. I want this now. I'm free. Yeah,
Of course.
it's. I think that's says a lot when your mindset can shift.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, it was just a feeling as well of immortality, like realizing all of a sudden that, geez, I'm 40 years old next year. I'm going to be 40. And at some point in my life, even now, I don't feel like I'm 40, but you have to be honest with yourself at some point and say, okay, well, you know, life will not go on forever. And with that, from the between 40 and 50, life is going to be a lot harder in terms of health between 30 and 40 if you're, if you're lucky, if you live a fairly normal life.
Yeah.
It's only going to get more difficult as the years go on to try and almost undo the damage that I've been doing through those years. So what am I waiting for to make that start? And one of the key things for me was to lose some weight, to have regular exercise, because I wasn't really doing that. I sit in a desk every day for 8 hours a day. So sometimes it's 3 in the afternoon. I've done like 67 steps all day, and I'm like, okay, but that's really not moving enough. So I made that promise to myself that, okay, I'm going to make some changes. But the problem was, if I'm honest with you, Claire, is I'd made those promises so many times before in terms of joining the gym, starting a healthy eating plan, that at that point I didn't believe that I would actually follow through with it to any extent.
Okay, so once you started making the changes, so I'm guessing did you make yourself like a schedule, like with the gym or whatever it was?
I bought myself a journal and a planner because I'm somebody who is famous for procrastinating, famous for being disorganized, famous for leaving things till the last minute. And so I treated myself to quite an expensive journal. I've probably got it here actually, because although it's last year's one, I keep it close because for me it was quite a pivotal moment for me, and I took pride in that, and it encouraged me, this type of journal that it was one that I had to talk about my feelings at the beginning of the month, what I wanted to achieve, think about things I was going to do. And I made a point every single Sunday at 9 o'clock to spend between half an hour and an hour planning my next week, thinking about my previous week. And this accountability, this checking in, served me really well. And this was what I think gave me that consistency that I needed and had lacked, because I always leave things to chance, leave things without a plan. And you said yourself before we started tonight, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And it's so true.
Yeah, it really is true.
And I'm a classic example that if I don't do these things, it will fall apart. Maybe not straight away because my motivation's high and, I want to change. But as soon as that motivation dissipates a bit, the plan goes. So that was a big thing for me, actually. And so I focused on the gym, focused on my diet. They were the two main things, but really focused on just planning and being organized. I also set myself a goal.
Does that go down to meals as well, like planning your meals?
Yeah, so I decided to start calorie counting. And I remember people taking a pee out of me because I was literally eating the same lunch and dinner every single day for maybe the first 3 or 4 weeks of January. I would maybe, instead of have fajita spice, I would have barbecue spice with my chicken, but it was always rice, broccoli or peas or something. And it was so repetitive. But at the same time, because I was organized in my plan and I had this click, this change of mindset that I so famously talk about on the podcast with all of my guests who have this success, that was my click. That was my moment. Yeah. And it was almost like the more people gave me abuse for eating the same food again and again and again, I was like, yeah, but watch me. Watch the difference this had. And by the end of January, I'd lost a good few kilos already. I'd knocked drinking on my head as well. And I came out of January and I was like, I've just had a really, really good month and I feel great about it. And there was something different compared to previous attempts to do this.
Right. I was going to ask you about the drinking actually. Like, did you just decide to completely cut it out?
Yeah. So last year I stopped drinking, I think until the end of March. I think it was 3 months I stopped drinking. And I'm someone who I enjoy a beer. I enjoy drinking. And as I've got older, the binge drinking has kind of slowed down a lot. But if I'm honest, I'm not someone who's got an off button. So if I have the opportunity, if I go out and there's no control there, either by myself or by my environment, I will go and go and go and go. And no matter how much I tell myself or promise myself that I'm just going to have a couple, unfortunately, if I'm out with my mates, if I'm out in a situation, Christmas party or something, and there's just no control there or perceived consequence, I'll just continue drinking until either it's time to go home or, that is pretty much the only reason I'll stop drinking. And unfortunately, that creates problems in my relationships because it's nice to be a little bit tipsy. It's nice to have a couple of drinks, but just being out your face, glazed eyes, then being an absolute arse the next day with a hangover, it's not really great. And it's not something really I
There's
should
not
be
one
doing.
effect for everything, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And so last year I decided to stop altogether for the first 3 months. And I reintroduced it not because I felt desperate that I needed to drink, but I fancied a beer. So I'd have a beer, 1, 2. But since then, when I stopped for that amount of time, I didn't actually go back to drinking in the same quantities, and I haven't done. So again, there's much more control there now. And with the calorie counting, it's always built into my calories. So I might go over my calories, but there's that accountability there, and at least being more conscious of what I'm drinking, or at least the impact that has on my goals, which as a result, I end up drinking less alcohol.
It's the goals that bring you back, isn't it? They ground you again.
Yeah.
Think, what
Yeah,
is
for
it I
sure.
want? Why am I doing this? Yeah. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Counting calories has been what's successful for you.
Yeah, so I basically, as I said, very repetitive because it was something that, the funny thing about this is I've actually got a very, well, I won't say, I'm not a nutritionist, but I've got a very good knowledge of nutrition in terms of macronutrients, how your body has certain needs in order to gain weight, lose weight. I've read books. I'm very much interested in it. I worked for a supplement company selling sports supplements before moving to Barcelona. So I have that knowledge, but it's the execution and consistency that I struggle with. So, I feel qualified to talk to other people about what they're doing and their goals. And, I feel like I know what I'm talking about, but then I still need to do that inner work to be able to talk. I can talk the talk, but to walk the walk myself is something I struggle with, or at least did struggle with. I'm getting better at it, but still work to do. But with calorie counting, I found it was a plan, and it was something I could follow. I could prep my meals ahead of time, because time's another factor, dad of 2, full-time job, lots of things happening. It had to be simple. Now, if I thought that I was going to be doing something that was complicated, and also in Spain, there's not really so many options. There's no like Slimming World. But I could do it online, but it's just not really popular. And not only that, with the gym, calorie counting for me seemed like the best option. And I stand by that. I still think that has been the best option. So calorie counting combined with going to the gym, I lost probably 10 kilos in that first 4 months of last year. Got down to the leanest I'd ever been. I'd set like mini goals, like, I'd like to see my abs because I'd never seen them before. Imagine, it's something that for some people it's just not important, but it was more important to me to see them because I'd never seen them before, than wanting to walk down the beach with my 6-pack, because as pasty white as I am, doesn't matter if I've got a 6-pack or an 8-pack, I'm still not going to be the most attractive thing to people to see, especially with all these tan, bronzed people in Spain. But it was just something I'd never done before, so that's what I wanted to do. So that was one of my goals. Getting stronger in the gym, another one of my goals, and just again tracking my workouts, tracking my progress. I'm a bit of a nerd. I've realized I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to like stats and Excels and things like that. So I've enjoyed writing everything down. I've enjoyed doing that. I've enjoyed that process of it.
Can I ask you a bold question?
Please do.
So something, I think like a few of your guests have touched on this before. It's something I've definitely recognised in myself, and I wonder if you share this. Sometimes when you're on a journey where you're so focused and you've got your goals and you have to be disciplined, it can tip into being an unhealthy mindset. So you can become too obsessed or too restrictive on yourself. For me, if I ever feel myself tipping, I like massively tip myself the other way, and then my balance is completely gone, and then I have to sort of start again completely. But I just wondered if you can relate to that at all. Does that apply to you or not?
Yeah, and 100%. And I think this is something that very astute to like pick up on that, because talking from your own experience, but identify them, but I've almost reached obsessive levels with this last year. It was great while it was going in the right direction. And the best way I've got to describe this was, if you think of like a pendulum, okay, with, you know, a piece of string just with a weight on the bottom, and it starts off gaining momentum, and the bigger the swing, you know, the good versus the bad, the bigger the swing starts to be in the good direction, the more momentum it has. So when it goes back, the worse it gets into the bad. And then the work, you know, so you kind of end up setting yourself these bigger fluctuations. Yeah. And someone said to me, guy Aaron Hill, who's an amazing coach, and he's part of the reason why I had the success last year and managed to do this in terms of coaching with him. He said, but what about, instead of allowing this pendulum to swing, because I thought, you know, great, I'm moving that pendulum in the right direction. But he said, but then it comes back and it swings back with far much more force, in that terms of rebellion, in terms of not being able to maintain. But when it goes back, he said, what about if you were able to get that pendulum to just stay completely still, but then you start to move up instead of swinging? And that really hit me, because he was absolutely right. And he said, you know, you can improve your life and do things without having to look for that swing backwards and forwards. Because in 2023, at the start of this year, I had that problem. And I had some kind of, you know, and keep into mind that the podcast started in September, which, when I would say, was probably at my absolute peak of health, fitness, so much so that I wanted to start a podcast to help other people, because I felt qualified to do that. In sense, you know, for the first time in my life, I felt like I'm somebody who could help support other people lose weight because I'd done it myself. But then it got to the beginning of this year, and for some reason, just something changed. But there was, I don't know if it was like a burnout, but I struggled with the podcast. I struggled going to the gym. My diet was rubbish. I started gaining weight. I just couldn't get my head around why, but it just, something was missing and something had happened. And I guess this was me on the backswing of that pendulum.
Right.
Now, although the bigger the swings, maybe the longer it happened, you know, the longer it is before things regress. But I think for me, I'd reached that point where it started to go backwards. And to be honest with you, Claire, I've struggled a lot this year in various elements with this. But now I feel like I'm starting to make progress again, which is good and important, and I have done for the last couple of months. But definitely a difficult first 6 months of the year compared to everything I'd done last year.
Yeah, and I mean, so many people can relate to that, can't they? Of just, sometimes you just feel a bit stuck. And I remember when I think we were chatting on whatever it was on social media about this feeling, because I was feeling similar too, and it comes in waves. And what do you do? How do you get yourself back on track? Or is it a case of not waiting for motivation and then just forcing yourself to be disciplined?
I think I had to force myself because there was no motivation. And if I look back at it now, I can make lots of excuses about my work life being extremely busy. And this is true. It was. And it was sucking a lot of my energy. But then I was allowing that, or at least allowing myself to tell myself that that's a reason why I shouldn't go to the gym today, or that's a reason why I can put a pizza in the oven instead of looking after my diet because I've had a tough day. I'm going to watch Netflix today instead of prepare a podcast episode because I'm tired. And I started having this internal chatter and justifying to myself and excusing myself for not being disciplined. So podcast is a good example of a podcast. I'd gone from doing 2 episodes every single week, got to January, started fluctuating a bit. There may be 1 episode 1 week, 2 the next week, one week no episodes. And I was, inside it was killing me, if I'm honest, because I felt like I'd started to build something and I was letting people down. And as someone, and I think you're probably quite similar in that, because you enjoy helping people, because you feel like you're important to people and they kind of depend on you, when you feel that sense of you're letting them down, it really hurts, like genuinely hurts. And it's like a fear that manifest inside of yourself that you're failing. And that started to happen. And I think because it was happening with the podcast, I allowed it almost like a punishment to myself to happen to me, to my diet, gaining weight again. And again, going back to Aaron, he said to me, you know, what is the biggest block? And I was like, but I need to do 2 episodes a week. Otherwise, I'm just not helping people enough. He said, but what if you did 1 episode a week? You're literally halving the amount of work that you have to do. And if people hear 1 episode a week compared to 2, could you still help people? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess. And he's like, then try that. And that for me was a massive turning point because I kind of took some pressure off myself.
Yeah.
And it was a weight off my shoulders that I think was creating all kinds of problems in my life in other areas. And quite funnily, I was thinking about this the other day. You know, sometimes like you just like in your own head thinking, and I thought like weight off your shoulders. Normally when people think of like something happening and a weight comes off your shoulders, I always visualize it like a backpack, a very heavy backpack, and that's a weight off my shoulders. Like, it feels good here. But it's not, for me, it's up here. And I think like the weight on my shoulders is my head, my brain, the mental well-being. And that is the weight that was really holding me down. And you asked earlier about my mental health, and that was causing all of these negative things to happen in terms of the gym and my weight. It was completely in my head. But it wasn't until almost allowing myself permission to take a step back a little bit and do things in smaller bite-sized ways that I was then able to start getting everything else back on track, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's achievable. That's good advice to anyone else, isn't it? Start small and don't aim for perfection, like you said earlier as well. Like, it's like sometimes you don't have to do a wonderful job at work one day. Just do a good enough job. Good enough is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be amazing every day. And I guess that applies to everything.
Yeah. The B- work. This is what Aaron calls it. And he's apart from coaching me, he's actually become a very good friend. And we met simply because our kids go to school or went to school together. And I was wearing a Tottenham cap, and he's a lifelong Spurs fan. So we got talking, and then I discovered he was a coach and everything else he's doing. And he's an amazing guy. He's really helped me a lot. But he's always talking about the B- work. You know, you don't, if you're always waiting for that A+, it's never going to happen. So start with B-. And I realized that. So I started applying that to my diet, to my gym. You know, maybe I won't go to the gym 4 times this week, but if I can go twice, then I'm making progress. I may not prep my meals for a whole week, and I may not have my calories or even track my calories every single day this week, but let's try and do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and see where I get on. And this for me was the redemption to getting back into it. Now, I'm still not 100% there, I have to be honest. You know, I'm still not where I'd like to be. One of the things that I do like is the fact I'm very consistent with the gym still. I'm still going there.
Yeah.
But diet is so important. And I could go to the gym all day, every day, but if I'm not tracking my calories, if I'm not aware of what I'm eating or drinking too much because it's summer, and when I say drinking too much, I'm not going back to binge drinking, but again, it's just the extra calories my body doesn't need in order for me to reach my goals. So it's that awareness that has to come back to it. And that's where the discipline needs to be turned up probably another notch now as we go towards the last like few months of the year.
Okay, so that leads us on to like your future plans then. Like, you've gone through your challenges of this year and your journey so far. What's sort of next? What's your next step? Your next aim?
So I think I've come to terms with the fact that it may have been better to have turned 40 last year, because I think I was probably in better shape overall last year when I turned 39 than I was 40. But that's just from a physical aspect. I think if I'm not harsh on myself, if I look at what I've achieved, I've managed to stick at the gym now for, it'll be 2 years at the end of this year, which is probably 1 year and 9 months longer than I've done it any time in my life I've tried. I've got a much better awareness now of how my body needs to be fueled.
Yeah.
Do you have a strange thing as well? And I've not said this yet, but I'm actually very good at losing weight, and I find it very easy to lose weight. And the actual gain has come from trying to gain weight, gain muscle when my objectives have changed. And although everything that's been happening in terms of losing my discipline, losing my focus, it's always seemed to coincide that if I'm trying to lose weight, I find it very easy to do. I'm very strict on myself. I'm very regimented. But then as soon as I try and gain weight because I want to build up and gain some muscle, I'm kind of like, well, and I can eat this extra because I'm bulking. I can have another portion of this because I'm gaining muscle. And so that's also been a problem that I've struggled with. So for me now, what I'd love to do is to, first of all, get my weight down, probably not more than like 3 or 4 kilos. So, and sorry, I'm talking in kilos because I'm so European these days. But, 5 or 6 pounds, half a stone, and I'd be a lot happier than I am today. And it's not even a huge amount. Like for me, it's just that, but it's not even about it being half a stone. It's about me feeling like I'm back in control, and I'm the one who's in charge of what I'm eating and doing that. And then what I'd love to do next, really, from terms of weight, is to achieve some goals, bulk up, maybe hit a few PBs in the gym, and just carry on enjoying it, because that's really, really important. So for me, finding that balance between doing the things I need to do to stay healthy and enjoying them, and making sure it's sustainable. And it's something I preach and talk to so many people about. So it's very easy for me to say, but I think it's finding that. And I feel like I'm so close to it because I've done it for so long last year. And I feel like I've bounced back from the problems I've had this year in a much more controlled way.
So you probably
I feel like I'm making progress all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you know yourself really well, and that you've got some really good healthy habits and a really healthy outlook and attitude, and you know what helps. And it is from being in those times where you're struggling that you then develop the resilience and the tools that prepare you for your next struggle, because it's all about is it ebbs and flows? Is that the right? I don't even know what the right
ebbs and flows.
is.
Yeah. No, you're right. The ups and the downs, the peaks and the troughs.
Yeah.
And I think as well, another thing that I really want to work on is working on myself, and really focus on working on myself, because so many amazing things have happened. And, this episode we've talked about me, but things like the podcast happening, it's been such an amazing journey for this last 12 months on the podcast. And it has completely changed my focus in terms of what I'd like to do now professionally. And so this for me is part of what's next as well. So for me, I really want to carry on working on the things that I struggle with openly, honestly, reduce some of that imposter syndrome a little bit maybe. And then between now and the end of next year, see how far I can take the Weight Loss Warrior podcast. It's not really a secret anymore, but I'm studying to become a coach. So as an extension of the podcast, I want to be able to help people in a higher capacity. So that's something that, I'm studying at the moment. I'm very much invested in enjoying this. So it's interesting to know how far I can go with that. And I've got all these different ideas, and it's just a case of making it happen. But I believe in myself. I believe I can do it.
But that's amazing. How powerful is that? And you'd be great. You'd be a great coach. And I mean, you do have a natural way of talking to all your guests. You can tell that people feel at ease and they feel safe and that they want to share. And that's really important. That is a skill. So you should utilise that. I think you'll do a great job.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's very kind. And you for a first attempt, unless you've been hosting podcasts that I'm not aware of, you're a pretty remarkable host yourself there, Claire.
No side hustle for me. No, this is my first. Thank you.
Something to focus on, maybe.
Maybe. I did want to ask another question.
Okay, please.
Something to recognise how you're doing mentally, how your well-being is to think, when I'm doing well, what do others notice? So when you're in a good place, when you're feeling in control, when you're on that upward swing, what do other people notice? Those closest to you, or people at work, or whoever? What do they notice about you?
That's an amazing question.
Isn't it?
I love it because I'll tell you the first thing that comes to my head. I'm sure I can probably elaborate on that as well. Things are getting done. It's the most simple way to explain it. Things are getting done. In my job, I'm on top of my tasks. I'm proactive. I'm not being chased for anything. My wife is a lot happier because things in my house are being done. You know, she's not having to rely on asking me 12 times to do the same small thing. You know,
Like turtle? Is it turtles or tortoises you've got?
Yeah, so I need I need to get a water filter for the
That's it. Yeah.
for the
So
fridge.
when you're doing well, you would have got the water filter. Oh my goodness,
right?
You've got it.
These are the water filters. But do you know what? This is me bouncing back. Okay, I didn't just buy one water filter. I've bought 4. So I now have water filters for the next at least 8 months, or probably even longer. I don't even know how long a water filter lasts. But things
that
get
future
done.
that you've prepared for the future. That's very positive.
And this is part of planning. So when I'm in a good headspace, things are getting done in all aspects of my life. And so that's probably the easiest way to explain it. And that has the biggest and best impact on myself, the way I feel about things, because I'm very, very quick to realize if I'm not doing my best work in any area of my life. I have that. I'm fortunate to have a level of self-awareness that I know when I'm doing my best and when I'm not.
Yeah.
But it's also a bit of a curse because unless I'm doing my best at something, I always feel like I should be giving more, I could give more. And that probably goes back to school. If I look into it, it probably goes back to that he has potential, but he doesn't apply himself fully. And so since then, I've always had that I could do more. And so it's only when I actually, what is it, they call it flow. Like when you're so like into focus and doing something that it's just almost happening automatically. You know, I'm getting up at 5 a.m, feeling great and doing these things. And I have to say the podcast is something that gives me that ability to do it because I'm so passionate about it. But I feel like it's something, and that again bounces off positively in other aspects of my life. So yeah, stuff gets done.
Yeah. But it is a powerful question because also then you have to think about what do other people notice about you when you're not doing good. So in your case, nothing would get done or there wouldn't be any water filters.
There would exactly, kids would be drinking dirty water out the fridge. Turtles wouldn't have any food. And there's always a long list. But another thing I've done recently, again, to try and give myself a head start, is I've started using my to-do list more on my phone. And I'm notorious for being asked to do something and I just forget all about it. So everything goes in there, every single small thing. And it helps me. So again, it all comes back to being organized and planning. And that's something I need to be on top of. Otherwise, everything else can fall apart very quickly.
Yeah. Great. Oh, thank you for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome. Can I use that question? That question in future interviews with my guests?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's great. I want to steal it for my future episodes.
Because I wonder how many people. I wonder how many themes there will be. I feel like that would be one. I mean, I'm definitely the same as you. Things even like the washing. The washing can be clean and hanging on the dryer thing, but that can be there for like a solid 10 days. Yep. Whereas if I'm on top of things and feeling good, I will just put it away.
Yeah. And how much better do you feel for doing it though?
So, and it's the tiniest of well, it's not that tiny, but like it's very achievable. But I will just postpone it. But once I've done it, I'm like, oh, why didn't I just do that? It's like if you have to go to the post office or something, just do it. Just do it. Yep. You'll feel better.
So just about the washing quickly, because I feel like I need to share this. Because of the sun being as hot as it is in Barcelona, and like when we hang the clothes, it's in the direct sunlight to dry. My wife always says to me, you can't leave the clothes there too long because they'll fade if they're out in the sun too long, which is true. So rather than just going in and pull the clothes in as soon as they were dry, I've started hanging things inside out now, so I don't have to bring them in so early. Just in case I can't be bothered to pick them in. I hang them inside out. So and this, for me, the reason I'm mentioning it is because we we find ways, our brain plays tricks on us, and we justify things in a way like, rather than just do the thing you need to do, I've created a different way of not having to do the thing that I need to do,
Yeah.
which is more effort.
Yeah. What is
If you
that
start,
avoidance?
it's exactly avoidance and
Yeah.
allowing myself to procrastinate. So it's just something else I've noticed in myself. So I've promised myself now that I'm not hanging things inside out anymore, and I'm just going to go and get them. We'll see how you'll probably see me in my next episode with a faded t-shirt, but
I was wondering if that would actually work if they're inside out. Would it not still fade? But yeah, I can see the
so
logic.
good.
Yeah. And also, unless there's anything else I've not asked you that you wanted to talk about, is there? Then I would want
it's been
to
amazing.
ask you what advice to close the podcast episode with. What advice would you give someone else?
So this is something that I'm very fortunate with. Every single guest that I've had on my show, I ask this question, and I've heard so many variations of the very similar things of being kind to yourself, of never giving up, believing in yourself. Again, all very holistic, well-being focused mindset things. But one thing I would say to people, and it's still focused on mindset, perhaps not just, it almost sounds unkind saying it, but don't kid yourself. If you're in a really bad situation, sometimes you have to be very, very honest with yourself and have that really honest conversation that you've been avoiding.
Yeah.
A conversation that you know you don't want to have because of how it may make you feel or what you have to face up to. But if you're on a journey, if you want to lose weight, if you want to improve yourself, the best thing I honestly believe you can do is to either write it down or go for a walk and just say to yourself, if I'm being completely honest, why am I not achieving my goal? Why do I fail at losing weight? Why have I not been able to achieve this? And write it down, because I honestly believe that first moment, as soon as you're willing to admit those things truthfully, you can start to fix them. But I think for so many people, we're afraid to face them. And there's so many reasons why that might be the case. And I'm not here to say that, it's easy. It's definitely not easy. But I do think it's an important piece of advice and something that is a key to progression. So have that important conversation with yourself, no matter how hard or scary you think it might be. I believe it will help.
I believe it will help as well. I'm going to take that advice myself. So thanks for sharing your true story and helping other people, and for setting up this podcast, and for being an inspiration.
Wow. Thank you. It really means a lot. And to everyone who's watched this, everyone who's been part of a show for the last year, there'll be another episode very, very soon focused more on the podcast and everything that's happened with that. But when I started this, it was done from a place of passion, and a year on that's still there. And having the opportunity to really share my story, to tell people a bit more about myself, just let you know that I'm not perfect. I have these struggles. I'm still working on myself. I'm still not there. I don't think I ever will be, and we never should be there. But I'm just a normal person as well. And I think having that ability to have those conversations with people is a special thing. So thanks to you, Claire, for being a previous guest and for being a really good host as well, making me feel very comfortable and asking good questions.
You're welcome anytime.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is the bit where we play the end music now.
Ding, 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 ding. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, you're welcome. Wasn't
similar, I think it's
music?
similar. That was the intro. Yeah, how does it go out? What's the outro?
You don't know now.
Cue the outro.
No, that's in the World Podcast. Thanks, Claire.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'd also like to say a big thank you to you, our listeners. I appreciate you joining us at the Weight Loss Warrior podcast and would love that you become part of our tribe. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast to never miss a new weight loss warrior tell their story. We
We share brand new episodes every single Monday and Thursday and hope that you join us next time. You can also find us on Instagram, where we share great tips and advice on how you can lose weight in a safe and sustainable way. Simply search for Weight Loss Warrior Podcast and follow us today. Remember, be kind to yourself and keep looking forward. You can achieve your goals.